Chapter 4. The Little Sea Poppet. Tucked away in the gingerbread-style mansion, Blanche and her witches prepared for Ursula's story. The sisters put Ursula in their most comfortable spot next to the fireplace, in a lovely overstuffed periwinkle velvet chair, with many red quilted pillows piled high to rest her weary feet upon. She was not used to walking on land, on two legs, and it wore on her. Alongside her chair was a little round table with a rose-patterned teacup set on it. Steam curled up and out of the cup like wispy tentacles. If it hadn't been for the unfortunate events for both the sisters and their dear friend, this would have been just like one of their countless delightful visits during which they'd usually gossip about the goings-on in the various kingdoms or share stories of their wicked deeds. There was nothing quite like sharing stories with other witches, especially with a witch like Ursula. She was a true witch, with a royal background and with great power, but most important, she had a sense of humor. There was nothing she didn't find humorous, even in herself. She was the cheekiest witch they knew, and that was probably why their little sister, Circe, liked her so well. Oh, Circe, their dearest little sister. Would they ever see her again? Was she lost to them forever? What if something terrible happened to her? Cried Ruby. You must stop this obsessive fretting over Circe at once, Ruby, please. Yes, calm yourself. Ursula is going to share her story now. Ursula's voice was calm and flat. There was no hint of her customary histrionic flair. Her voice did not boom. It was almost small, and she seemed more serious than the sisters had ever seen her. My father found me floating on the waves, clutching to a piece of splintered wood, which he presumed was the tattered remains of a terrible shipwreck. He scooped me out of the sea and brought me back to his village, and that is where I lived, with my father. He called me his little sea poppet, and raised me as his daughter, and that is what I was, his daughter. I waved him good-bye every morning when he went out on his fishing boat, and prayed the sea gods would bring him back to me safely, which they always did. He was the only person in the world who truly loved me. He thanked the sea gods daily for bringing me into his lonely life. I thanked them for bringing him into mine. Neither of us could know of the thing growing inside me, the power I had, or the form I would eventually take. If only I had trusted in his love and confided in him when I started to fear the thing I was becoming. The sisters were listening intently, waiting for the rage and fury, but Ursula had fallen silent, lost, it seemed, in her own thoughts. Memories, no doubt, of her father. They had never seen Ursula so pensive. Martha broke the silence. Did he betray you? Men always do, don't they? Fathers never love their daughters as they should. Ursula shot Martha an icy stare, but didn't answer. Was he revolted by your aquatic form? Frightened of your power? Oh, I bet he tried to kill you! Fathers are always a disappointment. Oh, we can help with hateful fathers. We can call upon the old queen if you don't believe us. If only Snow White didn't have the mirror. Oh, we know a thing or two about wicked fathers. Through unexpected tears, Ursula simply said, No. And the sisters knew they had gotten it wrong, terribly wrong, and they regretted their words. They fell silent, waiting for their friend to answer, even though they already knew it wasn't her father at all. It was the people of the village. It was them, wasn't it? Ruby muttered bitterly. It was those wretched villagers. Flance narrowed her eyes and adjusted her paws. She had very little affection for most humans. They had always proven to be distrustful and full of superstitious notions. When I started to show signs of being other than human, I was frightened. I had no idea what was happening to me. I was afraid I had offended the sea gods in some way, and they had set an affliction upon me. But you are a sea goddess of the highest rank, the sisters chimed. I had no way of knowing that then. I was just a girl. Every day the sea's call grew more powerful, and the urge to leave my father's shores harder to resist. The village was full of simple-minded fools, all of them too willing to blame every little mishap on the gods, all of them pointing fingers at those who may have brought the gods' fury upon them. all except my father, who had managed to keep to himself until I came into his life. Flance thought her wishes might cry, seeing the salty tears well up in Ursula's eyes and realizing what must have become of her father. What a terrible way to learn she wasn't of this world. Inevitable, but terrible. I walked to the cliffs every morning after my father went out on his boat. There I looked to the sea for answers, wondering why I felt this way, why I felt different from those around me, and why I felt compelled to dive off of the cliffs. I thought I must have been going mad, and I feared there was something terribly wrong with me, because surely I would die if I were to jump into the sea. That I should want to end my life in such a horrible way caused me great terror, but somehow, deep within me, I sensed death wouldn't be waiting for me in those cold, dark waters. It was something else, something familiar yet far too frightening to discover. I knew in my heart if I succumbed, the ocean would claim me in some other way, and to me that was like a sort of death to be away from my father who loved me so dearly. Every day I stood there, willing myself not to jump, praying to the sea gods to give me strength to stay ashore. But one foggy morning I could no longer resist the urge, and I jumped. And what I discovered was frightening beyond all imagination. "Is that when they discovered you?" asked Lucinda, her eye makeup smeared from crying. "Yes, they were waiting for me on the shore. They dragged me to the center of town where they were going to burn me. These were people I had known my whole life, and they were coming out of their homes and piling anything that would burn onto my pyre." "How did you escape?" Ruby asked. "My father drove most of them off with his harpoon, threatening to kill them if they didn't let me go. But soon there were too many." She was quiet again, nearly caught in the nightmare from her past. "They ripped him to shreds, my father, trying to get at me, trying to put me back on the pyre. He put himself between us, giving me the chance to escape, and I did, into Triton's realm." Lucinda spoke. "Triton's realm, you say? By right it is yours as well. You are his sister." Ursula sighed. "I didn't know who I was then. Triton didn't make himself known to me until I blighted Ipswich. He is no brother of mine. He didn't care what those foul humans did to my father. What they did to me! Oh, he brought me to his kingdom and presented me as his beloved sister. But even he wouldn't let me live among his people in my true form." She stood from her chair, knocking over the pillows, clenching her fists, and raising her voice in anger. "This was the face that greeted my new family, and this body, with the exception of a mermaid's appendage. He didn't think his precious merfolk could stomach the likes of my true design, so he ordered me to hide myself within a mermaid's body." She continued, "He didn't want me as a sister. He wanted this." Flance understood. Triton had stolen her beauty. He made her hide in a version of her human form, not allowing her to be herself. She had been trapped and made to feel loathsome. What a sorry brother Triton was, the cat thought. What a terrible brother indeed. Lucinda and Martha listened, fearful of saying something out of turn. But Ruby, as she often did, went against her sister's wishes. "You are a very powerful witch, and can take any form you like. What does it matter which one you choose?" "What does it matter?" Ursula yelled, her body now growing taller and more expansive. "What does it matter?" Very rarely did Ursula show her true self while on land. It was painful and made it difficult to breathe, and in the wrong company was possibly very hazardous to her well-being. But for just a moment, just the slightest of moments, she let herself be revealed, as if the anger within her could no longer be contained. "You're right. I can take any form I like. This is how I choose to look, and I have nothing to be ashamed of." "Of course you don't," sputtered Martha, clearly in awe of Ursula's rage. "But that wasn't the worst of his misdeeds, my darling. Remember, I was in that village for years, and my brother never came looking for me. It wasn't until after my father was killed, and I returned to destroy those foul, murdering humans, that he made himself known to me. And why? Why do you think he came? Not because he loved me, not because he had been searching for his beloved little sister. He sought me out because he couldn't rightfully take the throne without proving I was dead or unworthy. He abandoned his baby sister and didn't bother looking for me until it served his aims. I think he used his magic to bring me into my powers so I would transform among those who would hurt me. He must have known I was among humans and how they would react, that they would try to kill me. I would be surprised if that wasn't his goal. His actions caused my father's death, and he felt nothing for my loss of him. You know how Triton feels about humans. He wouldn't have bothered with condemning me for what I did in Ipswich if humans hadn't been transformed and sent to besmirch his realm, to soil his precious kingdom with unclean human hybrids. You should have heard the tales I learned while I was at court. Stories of Triton's wrath brought down upon humans who offended the sea were legendary. Why, then, would my actions be so offensive to him, do you think, if not to set me up as some mad woman, some evil, vile, murdering creature unfit to share his throne? When things were at their worst between us, when he was still making a pretense of wanting me to be by his side, he actually said my father deserved his fate for the countless murders he committed as a fisherman and for not fearing the gods. Deserved to be torn to shreds by those horrid humans. Your father was protecting you. Triton cast me aside because he feared my power, Ursula said. He said he was appalled by what I did to Ipswich, but truly I think he was afraid I would do the same to his kingdom and take it by force, she continued, growing more enraged. I don't think he ever intended to accept me as his sister, and I didn't know why he insisted I come back to his kingdom as such. We fought endlessly, and our arguments have become things of fables only the bravest of his subjects retell. Do you know he has banned all mention of me in court? The youngest of his daughters don't even know I exist, and the eldest was told her memory of me was a nightmare. He brought me there simply to prove I was unworthy to share the throne. You could have ruled together, said Lucinda, feeling Ursula's sorrow for the loss of her father and possibly for the loss of her brother as well. And now instead I shall take his kingdom, my kingdom, by force, and destroy anyone who stands in my way. He could have been my brother, my family, but that time has passed. Damn him to Hades for what he's done. Damn him to nothingness. And there it was. Hate. Hate for the foul human creatures who had murdered Ursula's father and for her brother who had treated it like a trifling matter. Hate for the brother who made his sister feel like a loathsome creature to be shut away and never looked upon. The sisters gathered that hate like a precious gift because that was what it was. It was the very thing that was going to bring them the power to return their sister Circe to them. Now they just needed to devise a way to kill Triton. Ursula smiled, another one of her wicked grins. It was the sort that made you certain she was conjuring a plan. And she did indeed have a plan. We will ruin his daughter. She laughed. Lucinda cocked her head to the right. Which daughter? There are so many. The youngest, my precious creatures. Isn't it divine? Ruby twitched with delight and rubbed her hands together. Princess Ariel? Yes, my dears, she's made it quite easy for us, actually. Has she now? Asked Martha while casting her eyes about the room looking for Flance, who must have slunk her way out of the witch's company without their notice. Yes, my darlings, it's delicious. She's fallen in love with a human. A human? A human! Squealed Ruby. Martha and Lucinda chimed in. What do you think dear old Daddy will make of that? Ursula smiled. His hatred of humans is legendary. He brings down their ships at every opportunity. The sisters looked at each other in a way Ursula had grown to understand after being so close with them for so many years. They had an idea. What is it, my darlings? What have you concocted in your devious little minds? The sisters sat silently for a moment in contemplation, their large eyes widening and smiles growing, cracking the facade of their smooth white porcelain faces and causing them to look like crumbling, whitewashed stone. She will want to become human herself. It will kill Triton, turning his beloved daughter into something he loathes. But that isn't enough. It's just one of his many punishments. First, to see her transformed, then witnessing her destruction. Only then will he understand true loss." Ursula laughed and said, "But not before he surrenders his soul, and that, my dearest darling witches, will be his undoing." With that all the witches laughed, delighted in their hate and with their scheme. This time, however, they were sure not to allow their voices to travel to the kingdoms beyond, as was customary. This was a dark secret sort of magic, and they couldn't stand for interference of any sort, not even from a well-meaning witch who wanted to lend her magic to their mix. No, this was far too important, because their hate was pure, their righteousness was unpolluted by doubt. "We will ruin Ariel, the daughter will pay for the sins of the father, and then we will kill Triton. And when we do, we will dance. Yes, dance. We will dance on the grave of your tyrant brother." The three sisters spun in circles, dancing around Ursula, who had splendidly transformed into her true form. Her tentacles grew and curled around the odd sisters as they stomped their tiny black boots, singing songs of Triton's death, while Ursula's laugh rattled the teacups and potion bottles in the little house where the witches plotted the ruin of Triton's youngest daughter, Ariel.